Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of You Season 4, Part 1. This is episode 1 through episode 5. The first half of the season dropped on Netflix today. And it's a really interesting show to me in that I don't want to call it like it's the greatest bad show because that implies that it's bad. It's not like one of my top 5 favorite shows, but there's a remarkable thing that happens with me in this show. It comes on and like 4 hours later, I just watched the entire first. It is so insanely addictive, and like I am so entertained by it.
It's so addictive. I love this show. Yeah, it's not like a top 5 Breaking Bad kind
No,
of show or whatever, but it's so fun and it's
yes,
so addictive and it's just I love this show. So, I'm really glad that it's back. I mean, they did split up the season, so the part 2 is going to be next month. We'll be back here with a video for that as well, but it's going to be hard to wait after these
no,
5 episodes because they did a wonderful job with this. I mean, for those of you out there who have seen The Glass Onion, this these 5 episodes are very similar to that. I'm sure that The Glass Onion came out and the writers of You were like, "Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs," because it's very similar setup of like pretend murder mystery party, a bunch of young influencers, young rich people, and a detective is trying to figure it out who's Joe. It's really well done though.
see, I have not seen that movie. I do not have that comparison.
It's very, very similar.
This is all I have. I love watching things where they make fun of entitled rich people. So this is
That's why we love Succession, which is
yes.
also a show that we cover here at the channel coming up
Yeah,
next month.
like that fulfills my satisfaction. But we're going to talk about a lot of the big twists that are going on here
Mhm.
with Joe. Who's after him? What's going on with Joe and Marianne? There's a lot to get into there as well as we project forward. But before we go further, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because, yes, we will be here to discuss the second half
Yep.
of You Season 4. Like you said, we have Succession coming next month. We have Yellow Jackets, another phenomenal show coming out next month.
Yeah, Snowfall, The Blacklist, Bel Air. We've got a really stacked bunch of videos
Yeah,
coming up here. So hit that subscribe button. Follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Just TV. Okay, let's sort of get a bit of an overall view of the setup that's really going on here. We had this whole situation where when we left Joe, he was looking for
yeah.
Marianne and he ended up finding her. And at first we did see her have a smile where, we could see that filled Joe up where he was like, "Oh, she's happy to see me. She does still love me." But I mean, that faded quickly when she remembered what was going on and ran off. And having that interaction between them where she kind of knows some of what he's done and he's like, "I'm going to prove to you that I am not the man you think I am. I am not this killer. I'm not this horrible person." And Joe has always felt this way, even though he kills everyone that he loves
Yeah.
and he kills everyone around him. He really has always justified it as he's doing the right thing. He's not like these other killers. He's the good guy. And because he's a good guy, that's why things didn't work out with Love because he felt that she was killing for the wrong reasons. She shouldn't be like that, that he deserves someone who's more pure and kind and good-hearted like he is. And I think that's really the biggest sort of overall arc of this season is, Marianne, I'm going to prove to you that I am this good person.
The thing is that Joe thinks he's a white knight when really he's actually just wearing clown makeup and he's driving the clown car. It's like he is not a white knight in any shape or form. He is in denial, but that's always what makes this character so compelling. And I like that that idea is still there for him, but also in a very different construction because like going into these 5 episodes, I thought Marianne was going to be a huge part of this show. Like, I thought she was going to be in every episode. The whole cliffhanger in season 3 was, oh, he's off looking for her. And what does she have? Like 10 minutes of total airtime through these 5 episodes? It's insane.
Okay, listen, I believe that this is not the end of Marianne.
Yeah.
Like, they really set this up for him to go on this journey of self-discovery where, Love's father has sent a guy out to kill him, but this tired hitman who's like, "Man, I just want to retire. I know that you have a bunch of Love's money, so listen, we'll make a trade. You're now going to be Jonathan, this professor. Here you go. You go make a life for yourself. You give me that money. We'll call it even. I just want to go and, drink margaritas on a beach somewhere. But the last thing you have to do is get rid of Marianne because she knows too much and then we're even." And he makes the choice not to do that. He lets
Yeah.
her get on the train to go home and just takes her necklace and sends it to Elliot to be like, "Look, it's done," as sort of proof of death. She's not done. That's my tinfoil hat theory, that all of this is gonna build up to Joe having to kill Marianne. I think that it's inevitable. This is who Joe is. He always ends up killing the people that he cares about and that he loves, and he thinks he's doing it for the right reasons, and he justifies it. And I think that Love last season was where he kind of had a mirror in front of his face where he was like, "No, I'm not going to look at this. This is not who I am." But I think he's going to end up killing Marianne, and he's really going to have to look at that mirror.
I'm really also shocked that I thought the final scene of episode 5 was going to be Marianne coming back. Like I thought she was going to be the cliffhanger at the end of all of this so that we would be here being like, she's back. Why is she back? What is she going to do? How is it going to happen? Like I agree with you that I think that Marianne is going to be back, and I think she is going to have a pretty notable part to play. And one option is obviously that what you just said, that he kills her, because that has sort of been a part of his MO. And there's a really good case to be
Mhm.
made that because every season of You is different,
Mhm.
that you go into the new season and he actually has to accept it. Like the theory that I have is that we're going to see Joe end up facing consequences in a different way, in that he gets arrested for something. Like maybe he gets arrested for killing Rhys, and we'll get certainly into Rhys. Or maybe Marianne ends up turning him over to some extent for some of the stuff that she knows, or she
Mhm.
just ends up being a witness to something. Because I don't want to see a full season of Joe behind bars by any
I
means.
don't
Like,
want to see any season of Joe behind bars. I am not
but
interested.
what I am interested in though is Joe like in a cell for like 10 minutes being like, why am I here? I am a good guy. Why do these people not? Because if he is going to go full stage denial to all degrees of the earth, like that's something I could see him doing.
Now, the one thing that I will say that's been very cool to see this season and gives me the tiniest bit of hope that Joe might be changing. I don't think so. I think Joe is who Joe is, but he is trying to prove to himself that he is not the person that Marianne thinks he is. We saw this relationship develop with Kate, who's part of this group of rich jerks that are all, we'll get further into that, but they developed a relationship throughout this. And by the end of it, after all these deaths and, she found her friend dead and he helped clean it up and everything that happened, she went and asked him out on a proper date, which they haven't really had. They've hooked up and they've had moments
Yeah.
and there's definitely a connection there. And Joe, in his own dialogue, was like, "I know how this ends. This has ended the same way every time with every woman that I've been with. And I'm proving to myself that I am not going to do this anymore." So the answer is no, I won't go and have a pint with you. And she's just like, "It's just a pint. It's not anything." And he's like, "We know that that's not true." And he makes a different decision. Now, the thing is he can't just make the decision to just be alone for the rest of his life. That's not who Joe
No.
is. But if he knows that there's a potential that he might hurt Kate and he doesn't want to do that, he has made this one right choice.
It's a big choice. It's something that he doesn't always do. Like I'm hoping this is not a situation where, he's recognizing that he's making this right choice because like all of his obsession energy right now is being generated, whether it be towards Marianne, whether it be towards Reese or like he's got like a good outlet for some of this stuff. Like if this outlet goes away, is he then going to end up going completely by the
Mhm.
wayside? Like I don't know. What I will say is I'm a big Kate fan, and mostly I'm a big
Mhm.
Charlotte Ritchie fan. She was on Call the Midwife before this.
She's great.
The Hunter to Call the Midwife made me sob uncontrollably. I never want to think about that again. But no, I
You and my stepmom Louise, same thing.
but you know, I think she's a really interesting character, and she's a great counterpoint to all these other just like pure idiots who I also just absolutely love, who are a part of this season. But I hope that this is something that Joe can actually kind of like internalize and acknowledge within himself, because he does it within the moment with Kate, where he does like resist that temptation. And I don't want to
Mhm.
say I'm proud of you, Joe, because that sounds like a very terrifying and awful thing. Given everything that Joe has done, I can never be proud of Joe. But it's like, look at you. You are capable of it. That is a step.
Okay, let's talk about Reese because they did a I guess a decent job of trying to make it not look like Reese was going to be the killer. But I mean, Reese was the sort of only person out of this group of kind of terrible rich people that was like, "Hey, Joe, you and I were kind of the same. We came kind of from nothing and then we ended up in this spot and I get you." I'm like, "Oh no, it's probably him." I mean, he's making a connection with him, and then whoever was setting him up and leaving these dead bodies around him and texting him with this, invisible app kind of thing. It was like you could tell that this killer was making the same connections where he was kind of like, "I know you, I know the real you." I'm like, "Okay, well then it's got to be Reese." I mean, no one else is talking to him like that.
It's really, and this will be a fun thing for everybody to talk about in the comments as well. And if you're enjoying this discussion, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We don't want you to miss anything else we're coming up with,
Mhm.
because like you really kind of got on Reese as the suspect because of just his, how he is sort of connecting with people and some of that in the story. I got on the Reese train a couple of episodes in, just because only because he's played by Ed Spaliers, and this is where I look at the casting department and I'm like, if you guys didn't want to make me think that he was going to be the bad guy, don't cast the actor who was like the worst person ever on Outlander. And so it's like during this show, I was just like automatically, it's like, okay, they're not giving Ed Spaliers enough to do. He's a reasonably big size
Mhm.
name. He's going to have a big story coming up. And so that's sort of where I ended up kind of landing with him. Like he's a compelling enough adversary. Like is his motivation is interesting. Like there's gonna be a lot of parts of this that don't make any sense at all, just because every season of You has at least like three things that are like, okay, that's completely unrealistic.
Yeah, there's a part of this that I was like, "No." And that's why like in the first little bit I thought that the killer might be Nadia, because I was kind of like, "Okay, so we have this student,
Yeah.
Joe is now Jonathan, he's a professor, there's a student that's in his class, and he's in this situation where he's like, "Oh, I need to, read up on murder mysteries." Now,
Yeah.
one of the things that we know about Joe is that he is a reader. He is a lover of books. I
Yeah.
completely relate, me too. But with him having such knowledge, even with him being a book snob, there's no way that I believe for a second that his 19-year-old college student has to come to his rescue to explain the plot of like an Agatha Christie novel of how they all play out. It doesn't make any sense to me. He would know this. He doesn't need someone to explain it to him. And I was a bit disappointed with that because this is where Joe really shines when it comes to literature, books, knowing sort of a lot about that whole, just world, that he wouldn't know some of the basics of some of the more kind of popular books that everyone would know. Like, I don't believe you.
Yeah. There's a few issues in
This
these.
Nadia character
No.
didn't need to exist at
No.
all.
Speaking of characters who don't need to exist, and this one pains me because like I do really like Sean Pertwee, but he's the butler who ends up like getting into it with Joe. It's
He's
like,
always the
yeah, why is
butler.
he always the butler, by the way? But like I didn't actually really need that character in here.
No.
But okay, it's time to talk about my two favorite rich idiots on this first half of the
All
season.
right, here we go.
Okay, number one, Rolled. Like, his name is Rolled, which is just like
He's great.
he is the most like ridiculous human being. I am Road. He should just introduce himself like that. Also, any scene that like ends up with like someone hunting another
I
human being
know.
out on a court. I've seen this like 8 times. It's always entertaining. Like, Rold is such a stooge, and I'm very entertained by him. I'm very entertained by Phoebe just because she is just like the perfect like she feels like a contestant on like Love Island or like one of these like really ridiculous like reality shows. She thinks she's like living in a completely different world.
They did a wonderful job fleshing out all of these characters,
Yes.
sort of, and making them all very different. I mean, where it wasn't like I was like, oh, we've got a bunch of sort of influencers
Yeah.
and princesses and whoever and rich people that are all together, but they really did a good job of making everybody their own thing of, how Phoebe and her, how she was dealing with things and her boyfriend enrolled and the princess and the tortured artist and like everybody. Simon was like, I know he wasn't in it a lot, but everyone was very different in how even they connected with each other. They all had money, and that was really kind of the big connection. But at the same time, like they actually had genuine friendships there. I know that with some of them, like Gemma, nobody really did, where it was like she died and everyone was kind of like, oh, well, at least it wasn't you, Kate. The show is so well put
Yeah.
together when it comes to their supporting cast. And they did a beautiful job with this. They made it that I didn't just hate
Yeah.
all of these influencers and princesses, even when Rold was like, got Jonathan on the ground and was like, hey, you're the eat the rich killer. We're gonna kill you.
Yeah.
And you've got the girls on the couch holding like swords and shields that they've pulled off the wall. I mean, this show is just, oh, it's so good.
Uh,
I'm so happy that it's back.
Episode 5 is one of my, like I'm not saying this is like the level of The Last of Us episode 3, which we also cover or anything like that. But episode 5 is just fire. Just
So
hilarity.
funny.
I loved all the stuff in the house. I loved the axe wielding. I loved the Gemma's body falling through the trunk when they pick it up. It's just, all of this was just so unbelievably funny. This is my favorite season of the show since probably season 1. There weren't as many characters in season 3 that did it for me, and season 2
No.
was decent, but just like they've really just written together a tight, interesting, fun narrative here.
Yeah, like I made the comparison with The Glass Onion. If you haven't seen that, it's great. It's just like the show with the same sort of feel to it, except obviously with this show you get 5 episodes and not just a movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, the real sort of question leaving this whole thing is we had Rhys grab Rold, grab Joe, keep them prisoner at the bottom of this house,
Yeah.
and basically left Joe with the cell like burning, and they're chained to the wall and being like, I'll see you back in London if you make it, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
Rold now knows that Joe is not the person responsible. Joe ends up saving Rold. Kate
Yeah.
ends up saving both of them. They get back to London, and what happens? Rhys is like, hey, I'm one of you guys. I'm going to be your new mayor. I'm running. And it's sort of like going into the second half. Rhys knows what Joe has done and what he's capable of. And now Joe knows what Rhys is capable of. And Rhys is looking to get into an even higher position of power. What is Rhys's end game with this? Like, why did he need really Joe to start coming in and helping with some of this? Like, is he looking to have Joe be his hired killer sort of thing so that, he can't be killing anymore once he's the mayor. So he's going to need Joe in his back pocket to do all his dirty work for him while he's, running for office.
This is a very weird theory, but I think Rhys just wanted a friend. And by a friend, I mean like someone who understands him on
Yeah.
like there's like sort of a Dexter Morgan thing kind of going on here where I guess, thankfully I'm not a killer, so I don't know how killers think, but like Rhys, he's probably not around a lot of other killers all the time. And I think he really wanted that idea of, okay, here's someone else who's like me. Here's somebody else who really understands. And the fact that Joe isn't exactly like him, they may have more in common than Joe's willing to admit. But I think that that's something that's not going to make Rhys particularly happy. But I'm so fascinated by where all of this is going to go. Like, are any of these characters even going to matter in the season 5?
My biggest question coming out of this with Reese is like, how did he know this about Joe? I
Yeah,
mean, we know that Joe faked his death and,
yeah.
he's a completely different person, all different ID, working in a different place, in a, different country. How did he know to look for him? What is the connection with this? Does he know Elliot or something? Does he know Love's family? Like, what is it?
I hope it's something where, like, I hope it's something similar to what you just said. I hope that he has a connection to somebody from within the first 3 seasons of the show, and that way they can whammy us with that in this second half of the season. And that's like alongside the inevitable return of Marianne and some of the other
Yeah.
things. Because it's like Joe may think he can bury his past forever. He keeps trying this ever since the first season. He's kept trying this, but it never works. And that's what makes this show so unbelievably messy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we will all take a breather, wait a good month, and then we will be back, of course, to discuss the second part of this season. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it, and we'll see you here next time.